Welcome to the Guided Podcast, where we support you to find the courage to listen and act. I'm Amanda Goolsby, and with me is
Katz.
Let's get started.
We're here today with Trevor Blake. And Trevor, I just want to give a little background here about how we came to find you when our good friend Faye said, you have to check out this book, 3 Simple Steps. I'm working with this man named Trevor Blake, and he wrote this book called 3 Simple Steps. And at the outset, I heard the title of the book and I immediately wanted to dismiss it because 3 simple steps, oh, come on, too simple. And yet the title of this podcast is Guided, the Courage to Listen and Act. And something guided me to listen. So I did. And then Amanda downloaded the book as well, and she's been listening. And what has your experience been of 3 Simple Steps, Amanda?
Well, it's, first off, it's been amazing to hear your story about where you started from and your life and your mom and where you grew up and, understanding just that, like you said, it can be simple. And I'm in the whole section right now around mentality. And so I'm curious to hear through your process. I know you're a really highly successful entrepreneur. You've built and sold multiple companies. And now you're taking what you've been able to learn through your journey and giving it back to other entrepreneurs of the world. And so, yeah, I'm curious to hear how you're guided to create and write this book.
Yeah, it's funny that the title can throw people off. And I'm the world's biggest cynic when it comes to self-help and personal development. And in the old days when we used to go into bookstores and you'd see the shelf, 7 habits of this and 5 laws of that and 12 ways to do something. I thought in my wildest dreams, I never thought I would write a book that had that type of title. And so I remember I had quite a battle with the publisher about it because he actually wanted to do even more than that. He wanted to be like 5 something or others. And it was just the cynic in me says, okay, make it an interesting title. So the book itself went through many variations of title before it ended up to 3 Simple Steps. And I lost my battle with the publisher. And so the title came out like that. But today I'm glad about it because the 3 steps come from what I learned when I was really young. And I was fighting to get out of my version of quicksand. I was, 14, 15, 16 years old. I was suffering from sectarian bullying and I'd hide in the library just to get out of the way. I wasn't much of a fighter. And so, and I would lose anyway because there's then gangs, right? So they'd hunt me down, but of course they were too stupid to ever go into a public library. So I knew I was safe in there. And I just started reading whatever was there. So that's how I became a physicist. I started reading books about quantum physics that blew my mind. And I went off in that direction. And I read books, I read biographies and autobiographies of people in all aspects of life and all periods of time. And I was blown away by 2 things. One is that they managed to overcome worse sets of circumstances than I was feeling sorry for myself at the time about. And I felt that gave me confidence. Wow, if they can overcome these things, then why am I making such a big deal about it? And then secondly, I saw these patterns of behavior and it's the 3 simple steps. And so there was these 3 things that I had to do over time. So I learned these 3 behaviors and I introduced them into my life. And that became a life of adventure and travel and then of business success. That's really all I did. But the difference between my 3 steps and other 3 steps that might be out there is that it's written by somebody who actually achieved something first.
So you said, your path or your progression became like this chapter of adventure and travel. Can you maybe share, before the business success came, because there's many, phases and chapters and seasons of life, but can you maybe share a little bit about during that season, what was your path of guidance during that season? Like, were you being led to go to different places? Was your adventure and travel just like pure exploration? Was it, where do I go? How long do I stay? Where am I living? What am I doing during that time? Can you maybe just share a little bit about your experience during that chapter?
So at the risk of sounding completely insane, I was about 7 years old. We had been evicted from our house in Liverpool. We'd moved to the country. We were in a ramshackle farmhouse with half a roof. I absolutely loved it. I just loved it. And I just fell madly in love down the rabbit hole of country life. But, coming from the city, having never seen a cow or a sheep or a rabbit before, it was like walking into Chronicles of Narnia. My mind was blown. And that would have been enough for me at the time. But then I was walking across a field one day and I had my first animal communication experience. And that's actually a chapter in a book I'm writing right now called The Psychic Entrepreneur. And that chapter is called A Hare Speaks. And then this is going to probably make people switch off, but a hare spoke to me and a hare gave me advice. And I didn't know what to do with that. And so I told my mum about it. And my mum was psychic to a degree that in England we called fae. It's like a local word for a psychic person, a medium, someone who's got what we call the touch. And she smiled and she was delighted that she suddenly found out that her son had the same touch. And so then I opened up about all the other things that had happened to the age of 7 that I thought were weird and didn't want to share with anybody, like interaction with the departed people and things like that. And so in some families that would be shut down really quickly. Like, don't be so stupid, son, pull yourself together. It's a grown-up world, most of it. But I have to give my parents full credit. They allowed that to blossom and flourish. And so my guidance, as you would say, started at a very young age. And it was a hare that told me to go to the library. And then when I was in the library, the librarian was also somebody who was quite fey, and she knew where to guide me inside the library to learn. So I always felt from a very early age I was guided. I was blessed to have an incredible, powerful feminine spirit around me at the time. So my mother was diagnosed with cancer in the same year when I was 10. She was given 6 months to live. And she just decided she wasn't going to die. And I remember being in the hallway between the lounge and the kitchen. And I was supposed to dry the dishes, but I was, slurking off or, I thought if I stay in the hall, she'll dry the dishes and I'll get away with it. And I was looking through the little crack in the door and she was looking up out the window of the sky and she pointed up and she said, I'll decide when I'm going to die, not you. And I saw that. What in her eyes, I saw that thing that I described today as indefatigable. This power of, you don't tell me, I decide. And I thought, my God, she terrifies me at times, but even God's terrified of her. So it's just really waking up moment for me. And from that point forward, we had a very, very special relationship because we were both fae. And so I was guided from that point forward. And in fact, just before my mother died, when I was 21, 21, I took her for her regular chemotherapy. And she said, oh, wait here. We were wheeling down the corridor in the chemotherapy bay, and she waited for a door to open. I thought, what are we? We're just in the middle of the corridor and nothing's happening. And the door opened, and a woman walked out, a nurse walked out, and she says, I want you to meet, this is my favorite chemotherapy nurse. And she became my wife for 40 years. So that's the type of guidance I've been blessed to have my whole life. And after my wife died in 2020, and I was swimming underwater for a year or so, so I agreed we had some time before Lynn died. She was in the intensive care unit for 6 weeks, and it was during COVID, and I used to break in like a burglar at night just to be by her bedside. And the nurses knew and made it happen, but nobody else knew. Security didn't know anything. And during those times, she'd go in and out of the vicinity. And when it was like she kept coming back with a message. She'd like, you just gone off somewhere, had a conversation, call back with important information. And that information is guiding my life now. And in that information was the timing and the sort of person that I would meet that would help me on the third trimester of my life. I've got a lot of stuff that I have to do that she explained to me. And I met that person 15 months later, and now we're married. Her name's Jess. So that type of guidance has been all through my life. And even when I've been walking through an airport thinking about what business I'm going to get into, a little whisper in my ear will say, go right or go left. And I find the answers there. So for instance, my first company, 2003, I just had a big row with my CEO, which you never win, of course, but I had the row anyway. And I was walking through Minneapolis Airport, and I got that whisper, that pull, like a solar plexus pull. And I turned right, went to a bookstop, picked up a little book, tiny little book, about why businesses succeed or fail. And in that moment, I had the idea for my first company. So after I'd finished my first company, after I sold it, I set it up for $200, sold it for $105.5 million 6 years later. Nice little story. that's when I decided I'd really like to give back. And so a similar thing happened. So I said to my wife at the time, said to Lynn, look at me, I'm a successful entrepreneur, so I'm going to take a sabbatical. And she just rolled her eyes. And then after 2 weeks of pacing the kitchen floor, she said, if you don't start something new, I'm going to kill you. So like what? So she said, well, write that book you've been banging on about for years and years and years. And she sent me to the airport to pick her mum up, who was visiting us. She was going to stay with us for a few weeks. And I did the same thing. And I heard some news thing. I saw this new self-help book. The author loved himself. It probably wasn't his idea to do a cover like that, but he had like a halo over his head and a stained glass window behind him. And he'd taken Christianity and mashed it to his preconceived notion of how to be successful. And he had an interview with Oprah and all that. And I said, well, that sort of book should come with an airline vomit back, really. And so I was so put off by it. I thought, okay, I'm going to write the book. I know what I'm going to write now. And that's why I did 3 Simple Steps. That's a very long-winded answer to the question.
Well, it's really great. It's really inspirational. A lot of times we have to learn by contrast. By seeing what we don't want can inspire us so much to do what we really do want to do, but, something is in the way. And in this case, you had to see a book that you wanted your book to be the opposite of. And I would say your book really is the opposite. I mean, here you are, a scientist, and creating life-changing medical solutions. And that was your intention. That was your intention. I recall reading in the book that your intention is such a critical piece of the 3 steps, the 3 simple steps. And they are very simple, by the way. Your intention was that you wanted to create a treatment that created less toxicity, less pain for the people that were receiving the treatment. And I imagine that came because of your mother's experience, watching your mother's experience. And you went on to do that. You actually went on to create that medical treatment, that pharmaceutical solution for people. And is that the first company that you sold for the $105 million, or was that a different company?
No, I still have that company. So the first company, the argument I had with my CEO when I found myself in Minneapolis airport out of a job, was that we had a solution on the shelf to cure a rare disease, but they refused to accept my attempts to get that off the shelf and where it should be to basically save these kids, or at least change their lives. I understood the reasons why they turned it down. It would have been a big financial undertaking, and the company was struggling financially. But I knew it was the wrong decision. So I started my first company just for that. And then that went on to develop other drugs for other rare diseases in kids. But all the time that was happening. Well, here's a talk about guided. Okay, so I decided to do this. I'm sat at home. Money's running out. I can't find any investors. And the phone goes on my desk. I pick it up. It's a guy called Paul in Seattle, and I was in Florida at the time. And he says, I hear you're not working anymore. We'd like you to come and work for us. So I said, I'm starting my own company, Paul. I really appreciate it. I'd never met this guy before. He, to this day, doesn't remember who told him to pick up the phone or how he got my number. We're friends, and we still can't figure it out. And so I talked to him. He said, come up to Seattle, we'll have a chat. And I was thinking, I'm running out of money. Maybe I could work for him for a couple of days a week, which is what I ended up doing. And while I was, so I'm flown from Florida to Seattle. In exchange for working 2 days a week, I get a little bit of a salary to take the pressure off, but also I get to use his office or the office that they had for the other 3 days, including the equipment and everything. So that helped. So I agreed to that. And they said they'd take a look at my business plan and see if they can help me build the business. But they ended up saying no to the business. But then I'm stuck in Seattle with them 2 days a week doing a job I wasn't particularly enjoying. But in the same building was the guy who had built Amgen and ICOS and other great things. He was in his 70s, George Rothman, amazing man. And no one would listen to him because he's 70 years old. They thought he's past his sell-by date. But I thought everything he said was so profound, and he gave me incredible advice. But one thing he did do was, another thing he did was he'd found this group of cancer drug, and he couldn't sell it to anybody either. This is a guy who built a company from nothing to something like 25 billion, and they wouldn't listen to him. So I took a look at it, and hey, guess what it was? It was a portfolio of drugs that had incredibly low toxicity and looked like they had high potential for efficacy. So I started a company only because I happened to be in that place at that time. And I didn't want to see this go off to, into a vault somewhere and never see the light of day. So I started that company alongside my first company, but drip fed it over time. So I still have that company. I did get my investors for the first company, and they came from about a mile away from where I had been living in Florida. So there's a real weird irony. I guess the guides and gods have a great sense of humor, right? So I'm now in Seattle in the rain. My investors are in the sunshine. I could have just stayed there. But if I just stayed there, I would never got this opportunity. So I've been drip feeding that opportunity in terms of financing it since then. And we just finished our phase 1 trial. And so we have a portfolio of drugs that have, you can't say in this business, no toxicity, because these patients are really, really sick. But we've been doing a clinical trial, 38 patients, stage 4 cancers, and we're shrinking tumors, and there's no side effects. And I know my mom would be very proud of that. That was a big deal. She handled the cancer with such grace, but the side effects just stole her power. I watched it happen over years. She's diminished until she couldn't. She really was too exhausted to carry on. And then I got to see the same thing with my wife. A different disease, but a cancer, myelodysplasia. And I watched the same thing happen. She fought so hard, defied all the odds for almost 20 years. We were still laughing and joking to the last day. I mean, that's incredible feminine power that inspires me. And so I guess what I'm leading to on that is, in business, I meet a lot of entrepreneurs who think the sky is falling in, and I laugh because they have no idea how hard life really is for people who have to go through something like that. And all I have to do if I have a big issue is remember my mother or Lynn and their incredible power and the way their intuition just it's kind of like they plugged into something. And so I've used that in my businesses. I've learned from them how to trust my intuition, how to deepen my intuition, which is, step 2 in the book. Because I also noticed in all the biographies I read in the library, those were the key things. The first thing was these amazing pioneers in life, like Madam C.J. Walker. Imagine being Madam C.J. Walker, being born to slaves, not allowed to work, and the only job you can have, even as a man, is in agriculture. She's pregnant at 14, she's abused, she loses all her hair, and she turns that into something positive and becomes America's first female millionaire. It's incredible. I mean, even today, a woman has a bigger fight to be successful than any man does, even though men deny it now and say, oh, we're all equal. That's not the case in business. But a black woman born to slaves, whether we're in a world where women weren't supposed to even work, let alone be business ladies. And she goes on to be a millionaire. I just think that those feminine power stories just inspire me.
I'm curious because you really take that feminine power and you put it into a masculine framework. In some ways, that's really what the 3 simple steps are. They're a masculine framework to cultivate that feminine power of intuition and listening to guidance. And I think the thing that lands in me with the biggest curiosity, because it's something that I can feel in my body, but I'm curious how you have dealt with it over the years in your being, in your visceral experience, is when you want to be doing something other than what is happening. So, for example, you don't want to be moving to Seattle from Florida. Turns out, according to the book, that you loved Seattle once you got there, but you didn't want to be doing it. But you did. You followed the guidance. You had the courage to listen and act. How do you have a masculine, linear, logical, for our left brain listeners, view on how you hold that where it's clearly what is supposed to be happening, even though you don't want to be doing it or you don't want it to be happening?
It's a great question. It's really insightful, Ali, so I appreciate it. The key thing, so I go back to me being a physicist. I have this lifelong journey of interacting with energy in a different way. And so I've found over time, and I've done this by observing Audrey, my mother, and Lynn, and now Jess, other brilliant people I've worked with in business who really trust their intuition, that the emotional level of the correct decision is total calmness. Like some religion, I don't follow religion, but some religions would say, a peace that passes all understanding. It's that flat level calm I know is the right, even though it's crazy, even though your brain is saying this is madness, like moving to Seattle in June and it's raining, even though your head says it's mad, your soul or your solar plexus, wherever you feel your intuition is, I call it a torso wand, the head, heart, solar plexus connection. If when that feels really calm, then I know it's right. If I feel excited, I will question it and probably change my mind. If I feel fear, it's definitely not the thing to do. But if it's really calm, then I know it's the right thing. And that's what I find. I don't like we have to use labels like masculine and feminine to identify the different types of energy. We all have both. We're just split by Y chromosome. So it's I found for male entrepreneurs, what I teach is how to deepen your intuition to make better decisions. For female entrepreneurs I work with and coaches, how to have the confidence in your intuition in a world that doesn't prize it. And so I am half feminine, half male. You are half feminine, half male, if you want to use those labels for the type of energy that we float through. And so the secret is getting to the middle. And in that middle, where we have an equal balance of intuition and analytical methods, when that feels calm, that's the direction you go in. That's how I've always looked at it.
I love that so much, because as you said it, what I felt in my being was a well of emotion that had me have the experience, the internal visceral experience of that's true. That is what's true for me as well. And it took me a long time to actually understand what that place of calm is. It's equanimity is how it lives inside of my being. And what you put into words is something that I've actually been taught by learning human design and my own human design. Do you study human design at all, Trevor? Do you know about human design?
I mean, so I'm a perpetual student of three-dimensional, five-sensory existence and how to expand it beyond that, if that helps. But I don't follow any particular path of study.
Well, so that's even more fascinating to me, right? Is that what you shared is I'd be very curious actually to look up your human design, which is based on your birth chart, and it's a channeled system, because what you described is the exact place that somebody who their authority is emotional. It's an emotional solar plexus defined authority, which is what mine is. And I'd be very curious if yours is as well, because that place of making decisions from equanimity, from the calm, is what really works with my system. And it's taken me such a long time to learn that, because what I had been taught, enculturated to, conditioned, was to go towards what's exciting or to go towards what scares me. My first blog was The Mom Entrepreneur, being afraid and doing it anyway. So go towards what scares me, or what excites me. And I have found the best decisions. I mean, they were all good decisions because they led me to the next ones, but the ones that have actually created the most easeful, consistent results and ease in my life have been those that come from that place of equanimity that you're describing, that middle place. And it can be a really challenging place to find. Now, I don't think that you're emotionally defined. Yeah, you're the same as well. Same. So did you feel that when you said it as totally. Well?
It's like making the decision not from the highest high or from the lowest low, or just really riding the wave of where the calmness is. And I know that when there have been moments in my life that were really what people maybe from the outside would say, really big defining moments or big choice points that came, I know that there was like just this depth of equanimity, of inner knowing, of calmness, where I was just like, this is exactly what's meant to happen. And even though it doesn't make any sense logically or to people from the outside, or it might seem really scary to someone else, I was like, no, I have complete peace in my system, in my body, in my inner knowing that this is exactly what I'm meant to do. And I'm just going to trust it and go anyway.
Yeah, and you hit a key word there, and then that's knowing, the sense of knowing. So I actually have a people would call it a course, but actually it's an experience, a transformation experience. It takes about 50 days, and it takes anybody from their version of quicksand to get free, and to be the best version of themselves. And in that, I talk about the need to get to a sense of knowing, and it was something that fascinated me, and that was always fascinating me when I could turn to, say, my wife Lynn, or now I can turn to Jess and I can say, what do you think of this? And it'll be something that they've never seen before, never even thought about. And I'll go, thumbs up or thumbs down. And they know. And I used to drive me mad when I was younger. How can you know? You've never met this person. I know this guy. I employed him and all this kind of stuff. And if I went against that sense of knowing, it never turned out well. And usually cost me a lot of money and a lot of stress. And so I've defined it as the levels of desire. So there's a level of desire where people set goals and challenges and stretches and stuff like that. And your life gets better, but it's not necessarily controlled. It can be a bit random. And then there's a level of belief, which is very stressful. To tell somebody, follow this program and have faith and believe in it, that's a really stressful place to be. But you can do it, and I've done it, and you can affect your life in a positive way. But when I'm going to use a phrase I actually don't like, raise your vibration. Because vibrations don't rate. We've got this thing in society where the high vibration is considered good and the low one is bad. It doesn't work that way. Energy moves in waves, and waves have all peaks and all troughs. They're all of the same energy, same phase. And so, if we change the frequency, which is a better way of doing it, to the point where we get that calmness, and you can do it with tools and techniques. That's why I call it simple. If you change that energy to the sense of knowing, then you can achieve anything you want just by thinking it. Using, we have to play with how to use the correct language and how to have the right type of thought. But you can just imagine things into existence from that sense of knowing. And I've found in my life, and it maybe just be because of the people I've hung out with, people like Faye, for instance, they get there so quickly and so naturally. And most men I hang out with, we analyze things to the point of paralysis, and we never get there. And so I try to teach, why I bang on about intuition so much, is to try and help people get to that sense of knowing. It's. I'm so glad you brought the word up because you reminded me, but that's exactly what it is.
Well, and for a left brain logical type, I'm a left brain logical type. I speak to a lot of left brain logical types. I'm a lawyer by training, and I work with a lot of lawyers and help them get to that knowing. And as lawyers, we want to know everything. But what the kind of knowing that you're talking about is a knowing beneath the surface. The knowing that we've been taught to seek is a mental knowing that actually ends up, it's a never-ending seeking. You're just constantly seeking more and more answers, and oftentimes feeling as if you're just never getting there. There's never enough. You can never get enough information, and you're looking for more and more and more and more to find that confidence. And I see many lawyers, many left-brain logical types, like you said, get stuck in paralysis because it's mental. And what you're talking about with this knowing, that some people might even write with a G instead of a K, gnosis, knowing, gnosis with a G, not a K, is actually something deeper. And it's a knowing that I think really comes from, like you're speaking of the solar plexus, the heart. It's a visceral, I experience it as a visceral knowing in my body, which I can actually access by breathing. You speak in 3 simple steps of accessing it through quiet and nature, which many of us as lawyers and left brain logical types don't have an experience with. And so this is, I think, why it can be so simple, although not easy, because it does require unwinding some deeply conditioned, very strong patterns that our mind has been given and gotten addicted to because they work at one level, especially, again, for the left brain logical types. You were very lucky to, I think, be born. I don't know about lucky, but you chose to be born to a woman who was Fae and could then accept your Fae early on so that it didn't get buried. I'm curious if that's why, despite, you've had all the financial success, you probably could retire, I put that in quotes, retire in the American dream sense, whatever that means to people. I'm going to retire. Perhaps you already are retired in the American dream sense of now being able to spend your life doing what you came here to do. And you've decided to create a business to change the self-help industry, to shift the personal development world. Is that because you have to, quote unquote, have to? Can't do anything else? Is what you came here for?
So, I think the word retire is the worst word in the English language.
Me too.
And I have noted, my own little mantra is, I intend to grow old disgracefully. And so, there's a great axiom that it was that, how do you know when you've lived a good life? And it goes something like, I'm going to live to my 90th birthday when I will die from a single bullet to the head, fired from the gun of a jealous lover. And that's a life well lived. And so it's such a precious gift, and it's so short. It's like a blink of an eye, and it's gone. I couldn't possibly think of retiring in any aspect. So I still have 4 companies that I work on at the same time. I'm obsessed with peak brain performance, which is why I now have taught myself the discipline, because I'm the analytical type. I was told I was a real pleasure to work with in the corporate world because I was so analytical. And I didn't realize that actually is not a compliment. And so I've got the discipline to stop work after 2 hours and go and connect with nature for at least 2 hours. Mm-hmm. Come back to work for 2 hours, go out there. It's a beautiful way of working. And you end up, instead of being stressed out and on antidepressants and all the rest of it, on your third marriage, and dogs don't even know who you are, you end up in a life with balance, so success with balance. And I'm so passionate about that because I meet so many people who get burned out, and their heart's in the right place, but they're pushing all the time, and they think there's something good about sitting at a laptop for 10 hours at a time, but all you get is diminishing returns. And so peak brain performance, I'm really into neurology, so peak brain performance says you can't concentrate beyond 2 hours, and that the magic, those aha moments when it all comes together, happen when you're not working. And you're also at your most creative when your brain is tired. So I've structured my day. If anyone's interested in this, I have a freebie that I wrote during COVID, because so many people were moving to working from home and carrying on with the same 10-hour workday, and you'll go mad doing that at home. So it's called The Practical Magic of the 5-Hour Workday, and it's a freebie on my website, trevorgblake.com. There's nothing attached to it. I just wrote it during COVID because I could see so many people getting burned out. And it's how to discipline yourself so that you can be really productive in the times when you're at your computer or at your desk. And you can be really productive when you're sitting under a tree. And all those wonderful magic moments that come across the Higgs field, which is what the cosmic glue that glues us all together. What comes across the Higgs field is the answers to all the questions that you had that you would never have found if you just stuck at your computer for 10 hours. So that's a freebie for anyone who wants it, the practical magic of the 5-hour workday.
Well,
and that will help tremendously.
So the miraculous thing about that, Trevor, is that you call it the practical magic of the 5-hour workday. And I have been teaching practical magic tools for some time now as well. And it is amazing to me that we've both come to that, practical tools that create magic. And yours is the practical magic of the 5-hour workday. Share. It sounds like in that on your website. What is your website, by the way?
TrevorGblake.com.
TrevorGblake.com. So on Trevor's website, you'll get another practical magic tool. This one, not from me, this one from Trevor. And I love that you're seeing the power of these left brain, logical, analytical, practical tools to create magic in our lives. And I think what you're saying is that in that 5-hour workday teaching, you're sharing exactly what your workday looks like.
Exactly.
So that you can run 4 companies.
Yeah. So how you structure a company really helps. So I use a hub model, which means I just find great people who make it look good and they do all the work. So that's simple too.
How do you get them to want to do all the work, Trevor? Tell us your secret.
I had to change my mentality from coming out of the corporate world from like a supervisory mindset to a peer-to-peer trust mindset. And so I didn't want employees because they can develop an entitlement mentality that is exhausting. And I'd done a lot of that work in the corporate world. So I decided to use vendors who really know what they're doing and are experts. And then I had to learn to sit on my hands and not be a pain in the butt by saying, how's it going? Do you have an update? Those kind of things. Tell me what you did this week. And so I had to learn to say, I'm paying these people to produce a result. It really doesn't matter to me if it takes them an hour or a year. I'll back. And so the only skill I've had in this is to know to get out of everybody's way and let them do what they do. And it's been beautiful. And so because of that, they love what they do and they're fulfilled by it. And I share the rewards too. So I share the spiritual rewards because I tell them all the good stories that I get from customers and they're part of that. And I like them to know that without what they do, this wouldn't happen. And then I also share the profit. So I'm a big believer in profit share. And people feel, when you do that, people feel real ownership in what you're doing and are inspired. And so, I sit back blown away by people's creativity when they're allowed to be creative.
Well, Amanda, you've been hearing me talk about creating share the wealth companies, which is exactly, Trevor, what you're talking about here, sharing the profit. And I'll just give a little practical magic to what Trevor just shared to make sure that you all really picked it up for those of you that want to build companies and not have it all reliant on you, which is and this is one of the tools from Trevor's book. So without question, you need to get the 3 simple steps, listen to it, read it, even better. As one of our dear friends, Angela, does, listen to it and read it at the same time. If you really want to take it in, listen to it and read it at the same time. And set your intention. Set your intention. There's a tool for doing that in the book. It's simple, but it requires you to do it. You need to do that part. And set your intention. And then make it really clear to the people that you are hiring and working with. What is the outcome? What is the winning outcome that you want to create together? And then let them get there however they get there, with you being a guide to help them learn from their mistakes, remove blocks that are in the way, you helping them to achieve that objective their way. They get to learn how to do it. You're just the wisdom guide to help them move those blocks out of the way and show them how to be in the process, because you're being what you want to see them be. You're being the change you want to see them be. That's your role. And then reward them. Reward them. Don't keep all the money for yourself. This is about sharing the wealth. And so that's a little practical magic step by step. Trevor, did I miss any of the steps there?
No, and so you hit on, we could talk for the next 3 hours on what you hit there with intention, but the key thing for most people who don't have a good relationship with money, and that's true of many entrepreneurs who think that selling a company for 100 million is a destination, and then you hold on to it. Everything in the universe, I'm saying this to your listeners, not to you two. Obviously, I'm preaching to the choir here, but everything in the universe is energy. Is made of the same stuff. Everything, and that includes money. And the magic I talk about is the definition of Aleister Crowley, which is that magic is simply the conversion of one form of energy into another, under the power of will, within the laws of nature. And so what we do is we convert labor into this thing called labor energy, into this thing called money energy, and then into some other type of energy. We just continuously convert this thing. Once you start to do that, then you start to flow with it. And because of that, you don't own it. So you can't put it in your own Hogwarts vault. You've got to share it. It's the right thing. You have an obligation to, I think, anyway. And so, the mantra for all my companies is make a positive difference, have fun doing it, and share in all the rewards, material and otherwise, to come naturally as a result of taking that energy and flow. And once people grasp that, they feel part of the flow. And you'll get so much more than you would ever get if you just paid someone to do something. You get people coming up to you saying, have you thought of this? Do you mind me offering you this solution? Do you mind if I have a look at that? And they don't do that unless they feel they're part of the flow.
Well, I have no doubt we're going to do some work together that will feel like play in the future, Trevor. I want to, deeply thank you for joining us. But before we let you go, I just want to check in with you, Amanda, and see if there's any questions that are bubbling up for you, given really where you are in your life. Trevor and I are at the other end of the spectrum here, and you're much earlier on in the process, although in some ways, you've done a lot more than most people your age, and yet coming at it like, is this all stuff you already know?
I would say that much of what we've talked about today, I've had the opportunity to learn and weave into parts of my journey, especially when we go back to your story, Trevor, of just the pathway of guidance and the deepening of the feminine intuitive knowing and listening on that path. And, I think that now that I'm still in my path of evolution and my following and trusting and listening to that guidance, it's really for me about continuing to seek mentorship, continuing to stay connected to those who are further along the path than me, and continuing to connect to the wisdom of what they've been through and connect to the path of growth that they've been on. And so I'm deeply appreciative and grateful for just you taking the time to be with us today and to share a bit of your story, to share your wisdom through the 3 Simple Steps book, and to offer this guidance of, wow, the nature and the silence and the solitude is something that has been so profoundly impactful on my journey. And finding that balance is something that I desire to continue to cultivate throughout my path, because I don't want to do 14-hour days. I'm clear on that. I did that for a period of time. And to your point, I hit that place of if this is I don't want to do this. If this is what this is, if this is what quote unquote success is, then I don't want to play this game. And so finding that flow and trusting also in the guidance of, can I spend that time in nature? Can I deeply connect in? Can I listen to what's coming through? And then can I allow that inner knowing and that wisdom to guide my path along with the wisdom of people that are further along the path than me? So I feel grateful to have the opportunity to be with you today. Thank you for being one of our first guests on the Guided podcast, and for being so generous of your time and spirit, and just in your sharing of the path that you've been on, and coming from such a place that most people, from a story and an upbringing and a background that many people will never know, that level of resilience that has been required in your journey to be where you are today.
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
And so for people that are looking for you, they can find you at trevorgblake.com. Obviously, 3 Simple Steps on Amazon, Audible. But you mentioned the transformation experience. Can you just give us a few minutes on what is that experience and how does somebody know they're ready for it?
It finds them. Sorry, that's probably a weird answer, but that's how it happens. And I would always recommend people read 3 Simple Steps first, because it's only $10. It'll help you find out where you are and the work that you need to do. And then if you get excited about realizing that you have within yourself the ability to create your own magic, then you go to transformation. And transformation, we talk science and we talk intuition. So the first part of transformation is very much quantum physics. And if all this talk of nature and intuition is putting some of your listeners off, all I'll tell you is that we go into the science in a beautiful way. We learn that in order for anything to exist at all, it has to exist in at least 10 dimensions. And we're only 3. So there's so much more out there that you can tap into if you'll allow yourself to be open to it. So then from the foundation of knowledge, we go into deepening our intuition and playing with some beautiful tools and techniques that blow people's minds. You know, when you have your first encounter with an animal that actually talks to you, or a tree gives you advice and stuff like this. It all sounds weird now, but it is actually based on pure quantum physics. And then you take that power in the last part of the transformation experience and you learn how to direct it. So you'll learn how to set intentions at work, crushing time, because time's an illusion too. So we learn all of that stuff, and you end up with tools that make you individually really powerful magician of your own life. Mm-hmm. And people have arrived in the transformation experience up to their eyes in debt. And 2 years later, they're doing $200 million deals. That's how transformative it is. But it doesn't have to be about business. It's also art and writing and all this.
Well, I'm really excited for it personally, because I've been coming to some of what you've spoken about here through just my own really bumbling along and figuring it out through guidance. And I'm looking forward to learning really the science of it and learning it from somebody who's had access to it for as long as you have, and through such a clear channel as you have. Because I'll be honest, the path that I have been making my way through to get to the magic has been, I think, harder than it's needed to be. I'm ready for a little more ease. And I've tasted enough of it to know that everything you're saying is 100% spot on and true. And I think what I've personally been ready, now I'm ready for an upgrade with, is just more of the tools that I hear that you're speaking about that can give me an even greater degree of access. And what I'm hearing is that it's going to actually come through some discipline.
Yeah, discipline will be more.
Oh goodness, another layer of growing up is on its way. Okay, well, with that then, we will certainly be sharing the journey with you here at Guided, the podcast, giving you the courage to listen and act. Trevor, thank you so much for being here with us today. Amanda, thank you so much for really creating this whole reality happening. It's all because of you, truly, that this has occurred, and really our partnership and our connection. Yeah. And you listening to guidance so deeply from such an early age. So Thank you.
Thanks, Trevor. Appreciate you.
Thank you both. That was a lot of fun. Thanks.
If you enjoy the Guided podcast, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. And be sure to come back next week. Until then, this is Katz and
Amanda Goolsby.
And remember, life knows.